In a majority of my conversations with this lady, with this girl, I noticed that there was a form of like self-abandonment, and it's just, it has a way of showing up, and it is not pretty. It is difficult to be attracted to them because they do not find themselves attractive enough to stay, to work on themselves, because it is someone who has seen themselves and really understood how valuable, how attractive, how precious they are, that stays and work on themselves. It's that kind of person that can really just, develop themselves. And when you meet people like that, trust me, the conversation is very different. So, the fourth soul wound that prevents your feminine energy from flourishing is what I call the self inflicted wound. So, the independent phase puts us in the position of our own self leader. So, in times when we fail to show up as an ideal leader should for ourselves, we indirectly communicate a feeling of self rejection to our soul. And yeah, it might sound very light, it might sound very unserious, but trust me, this wound I have found by far to be the most dangerous kind of soul wound. And this does not even put you in a healthy state of mind at all. It is like the most alarming and, in my own opinion, the most dangerous soul wound for anybody, because I believe that it is through the self wound that a lot of persons got into the final phase of depression, when they get to that mental state where they feel that they are no longer worthy to be alive, or the world could do better without them in it. And you can just see how, like, everything about this wound, this particular self-inflicted wound, just leads a person down to their death. Basically, like, it's a very quick countdown clock to a person's death. Okay, so I'm just going to give more context to it, right? So, the ways that the self inflicted wound shows up in a person, or the result of the self inflicted wound, is the person or the lady is in a state of self abandonment, or she is addicted to one or more forms of escapism. And these two, self abandonment and addiction to escapism, are two things that you can see, like, it is literally the two habits that kills the whole essence of your feminine energy. Because feminine energy, like I said, it's really about connecting with yourself. It's about the heart, it's about the body, soul, and heart connection. So it requires you mastering the art of really sitting with yourself and really just loving your silence and your solitude, and accepting yourself, your flaws, and everything that comes with. So, self abandonment and addiction to escapism are like the biggest enemies of femininity. And escapism, or addiction to escapism, so for someone who is not really clear on that, like, you see a lot of like grown ups that have like this unhealthy attachment to video games, right? So video games are a form of escapism. So because this person has rejected themselves, they have perhaps maybe seen their ugly self. She has seen her ugly self and she's not pleased with herself. So she has now sought out a sense of purpose and energy from a different factor that she now considers her own real life, her own, version of real life. So for some ladies, well, for a lot of guys, it's usually like video games, drugs, alcohol, and all of that. So for a lot of ladies, it could look something like alcoholism. For some, it could even be over shopping. Yeah, over shopping is, it can be a form of addiction, right? So for some, it's, addiction to sex. For some, it's addiction to so many other things, right? So these are all forms of escapism, because they do not like themselves. They cannot accept themselves the way they are. So they are now addicted to something else. So, another unique thing about the self inflicted wound is it easily occurs in people who already have the father wound or the mother wound or both, or probably all the first three wounds that I had mentioned. So, usually, when a person has those first three wounds that I have mentioned, it's very easy for them to get the self inflicted wound. And the self inflicted wound, it shows up in ways when, we do not show up for ourselves when we should. We fail to meet up to our own standard. So when you say certain words, or you say that you're the kind of person who is going to do this, and you end up not being the person who does it, there is a warrior. Your true self, let me tell you something. Your true self, your real self, who you really are, is not the you that is staring at this video right now. So your real self is inside of your physical self. So it's like having someone who is eavesdropping on you, like someone who watches you. That is your real self. And how the rejection happens is in those moments when you reject yourself, or when you do not meet up to your own standard, or you do not sacrifice for yourself, you do not work hard for your own dreams, you do not work hard to attain the ideal life that you want. In those moments when you feel yourself like that, your true self, right, your inner mind picks up on those things. So your true self picks up on those things. She sees you doing those things, and what you're communicating to her is that, girl, you're not worth it. Like you're not worth the effort. You're not worth me going through the pain of discipline for. You're just not worth it. And each time you do that continuously, what you're doing is you're self-rejecting. You're self-rejecting, and that is sending a message to your soul, and it's not a good message. So it's a message that naturally develops into self-abandonment and addictions. So this is why this is the phase where it is easy for addictions to come up. Hardly will you see a child with a very healthy family structure, like the father is emotionally present, the mother is emotionally present, and then you see that the child is addicted to computer games. Hardly will you see things like that. So it's usually the ones that are not getting enough emotional fulfillment as they should from their parents. I remember there was a time in my life when I was going through like a really, really dark phase, and my boyfriend at the time and I were like, our relationship wasn't perfect at that time, but there's this one thing that we have that really just stands out in our relationship, and it is our friendship. So I remember, I think around the last times of us still dating, that we actually spent together. During that period, we spent, a lot of time together on that very day. So towards the end of that day, we're having, was it dinner or lunch? I can't really remember. So around that time, we're having dinner, and I remember he said to me, like after we had spent the whole day together and stuff, he said to me that, it looks like you're here, but you're not really here. Like your body is here, but you are not here. And I remember at the time I was going through a very, very rough patch. Something that even I myself could not describe. Like at that time, I didn't quite know what was wrong with me, but I felt like my soul was literally no longer in me. So what was happening to me then was that I was in a mental state where I was almost like on the lobby to being depressed. Basically, I just endured a traumatic experience that I didn't get to really talk about and heal from. So I was holding on to that trauma. I wasn't healing from it. I was holding it and still trying to show up every day like the girl who is not going through all of those things. But it was eating me up inside. And because I kept ignoring it, the message I was sending to my soul is, you're not worth it. So I kept self-rejecting. Instead of facing the wound and facing the discomfort that was affecting my peace, I just ignored it. And so what happened was that the few days leading to that particular day, that very day that we're having dinner together with my ex-boyfriend at the time, was I honestly I just felt really lost. So I felt lost, and even long before he realized it, like long before that day, I also felt the same thing he said. Like I literally felt it. I was like, I remember I would go to bed and I would cry and I would wake up in the morning and I just hated waking up. I didn't know what to do with my time, with my life. I didn't know how to get up from the bed. I just kept feeling like I couldn't feel myself anymore. I remember saying it in my mind. I never said it out loud to anybody during that period. I remember saying it in my mind that it feels like my body is here, but my soul is not here. So when fast forward to like a few days after, when I was now having that dinner with my ex-boyfriend, when he mentioned that, when he said it to me that you look like your body is here, but your soul, you are not here, it just made sense. It made sense. And sadly, I still didn't have the maturity and the courage to talk about it then. And even he didn't seem like he was ready to listen. So I didn't get to talk about it then. But the pressure really got to me that, like a few weeks later after that, I just ended everything. And like I just pulled the plug on the relationship. Like I said, it wasn't all that perfect at that time, but I pulled the plug because it got to a point where it was just like I couldn't hold on to anything anymore. Like I could not. I didn't have the capacity to hold on to the relationship anymore. So I pulled the plug. And this is one of the things that the self-inflicted wound can make you do. So, for more context on that statement, what I mean by that statement is the self inflicted wound has a way of making us weak, and it has a way of repressing our innate ability to hold on to the things that are most important to us in life. The things that we value the most, that reminds us of our ideal life, the life we would have loved to have if we had all the strength and the ability. So things like my relationship at that time was one of the special things that I had going on for me. It was actually one of the only special things that I had going on for me. And when my self-inflicted wounds started to come up to the surface, it became harder and harder for me to pretend and hold it in. So I eventually pulled the plug because I got tired of pretending, and I no longer felt worthy of the relationship. What it can look like for another person is that becomes the moment where another person can decide, you know what, this is the day that I end it all, because I do not know how to live with myself from here on out. So today I'm just going to put an end to it. So it can look like that to another person. That is why I believe that this is the most dangerous soul wound. So a woman in a healthy state of divine feminine energy, a woman who is flourishing in her divine feminine energy, would appear, as someone who is flowy. She is someone who is like, her essence is undeniable. Like when you're around her, you can just tell that her energy is open. You can just tell how present, how sensual, how sensitive, how aware she is, and like how in her body she is. But when she is a woman who walks around with the self-inflicted wound, you can almost see that there is a level of detachment about her. Like it is something that it just shows. It shows up in so many ways. It shows up in how she avoids confrontations. She avoids serious talks. It shows up in how she's addicted to certain habits or beliefs. I've seen a lot of women who have like this addiction to like shopping. I've also seen a lot of women that are like they are so centered on men, like they have men centered in their lives. Like there are just women who want to go to a certain place because they're hoping to get like eyeballs. And that can also be like a form of um self-abandonment. Like this person does not really see themselves, they don't rate themselves that much, so they live their life based on male validation and the male gaze and stuff like that. And there are also like women and men who also exhibit the same behavior towards women. So this, whenever you see behaviors like this is as a result of a person that is working with the self-inflicted wound. So yeah, like there is just no way for me. I have seen a lot of women, okay, maybe not a lot, but I recently had this female friend who, like, I kind of noticed that about her. I noticed because like when the friendship began, I thought she was like me, who was looking to build something real, something genuine. But I then noticed in a majority of my conversations with this lady, with this girl, I noticed that there was a form of like self-abandonment. And it's just, it has a way of showing up, and it is not pretty. And I have a male friend who told me about a girl that he was liking at a time, and he just noticed that this girl, her conversation is always just about like certain very unimportant topics that don't even glorify or uplift her in any way, and she's always about that. And I've also heard like people rave about people online who are so addicted to celebrity news. Like they're just really like they're so passionate about what is going on in a celebrity's life than what is actually going on in their own life, or things that are going on in the society that can actually affect their own life. They are more passionate about celebrity gossips and all of that. That is a form of self-abandonment. That is a form of someone living with a self-afflicted wound. And when you meet people like that, usually at the beginning of it, they look like, okay, this person can, be an attractive person. But like when you really get to know them, like when you get to that point where you've picked up on these habits that they have, you just instantly see how that it is difficult to be attracted to them, because they do not find themselves attractive enough to stay, to work on themselves, because it is someone who has seen themselves and really understood how valuable, how attractive, how precious they are, that stays and work on themselves. It's that kind of person that can really just develop themselves. And when you meet people like that, trust me, the conversation is very different. The conversation is different. Their purpose is different. Their purpose for going out to get a drink is different. Okay, is very, very different. But when you have a meetup with someone who has abandoned themselves, even the dates, like it will just, there will be just so many awkward silence in that date. Like it shows. Whereas when you meet someone who has a fullness of themselves, like a healthy fullness, I'm not saying someone who is overly self-centered and all of that, like people that are balanced, like people that really see themselves, people that know their worth, they know their value, and they carry themselves in that energy. When you meet with them, a 4 hours conversation can feel like a 4 minute conversation with them. That is how you know that this person is healthy. And a divine feminine woman who is working with that wound, she just instantly makes the people that come to her just want to disconnect from her, because they can see that, okay, all that she's doing is all just performance. It's not really down to her belly, it's not really coming from her inside, it's just something that she's performing from her head. And usually it is in order to get something or to achieve something, basically. So yeah.